Hey everyone, this is a mini pod for Find Your Film. This is sort of a redux of our first couple of episodes of Find Your Film when Eric Holmes chose William Friedkin for his director's spotlight. So we're coming back right now again with Eric Holmes. Do you remember the movies we covered? Bruce, do you remember the movies we covered for that William Friedkin spotlight?
We did Good Time. We did Killer Joe. We did Sorcerer and the documentary.
The People versus Paul Crump. The People versus Paul Crump, which was very interesting. Surprisingly, a very good documentary, guys. Do you remember how good that doc was? My goodness.
Yeah.
There's some shots in The People versus Paul Crump that they did I remember Friedkin did a reenactment of a robbery, I believe, at the beginning. And it's better than most reenactments you'll see on network television or cable now. The way it was shot in a cinematic fashion, even though it was a black and white doc. Anyways, there's still a lot of movies of Friedkin that we haven't covered. Oh my gosh, I love Sorcerer, but this one specifically, I decided to pick The Hunted because it's personally one of my favorite William Friedkin movies. And then I decided to throw a flyer at Jade because it's a movie that I haven't seen. I've interviewed Joe Esserhouse a couple of times. Nice guy. He's a screenwriter from Basic Instinct, and he's a screenwriter for Jade. Yeah, Eric Holmes, you've said that William Friedkin has not directed a bad movie. Do you still stand by that assertion?
I do, but I'm kind of trying to read the room, and I'm thinking you may disagree with.
You don't have to read anything. When it comes to cinema, there's no such thing as cinema illiteracy. You know, I just said on the last episode how awesome I thought Sweet Girl was. So everyone has their own taste. Everyone has their own taste. By the way, Sweet Girl on Netflix. Go check it out. I kind of really dug it. You can holler at me later or yell at me. No, but that's not about Sweet Girl. We're here about Jade. You're trying to read the room about how I feel about Jade. And are you excited about this mini pod? Bruce Perky, I'm trying to read Bruce Perky to see how he feels about.
I'm excited about this mini pod. I am so excited about this mini pod.
Okay.
So excited.
Oh, and he's wearing the cinematic shirt. Oh, that's a show that I do with Anderson Cowan. My better on that episode on that show here. My betters are Eric Holmes and Bruce Perky. You know what? Without further ado, there's not going to be a lot of movie facts here. Here's the thing: we're going to break down Jade and The Hunted, and I'm going to throw this out to you guys, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to give our mini reviews, and then we're going to get into spoilers. So this episode will be value added as far as if you want to see Jade or The Hunted, we'll give you our recommendations or not. And then afterwards, we're going to do a very quick recap at the end. So we're going to actually make sure that the spoilers are not front loaded. So you can actually, if you have not seen either film, just enjoy this podcast for most of it, and then just dump yourself out at the end when we briefly talk about the ending. Okay, now let's start off first with Jade. Jade was released in 1995, directed by William Friedkin, written by Joe Esserhouse. And here's the thing: around this time, David Caruso was considered possibly a box office A-list actor because he had just come off a really successful run, albeit short one, with NYPD Blue. He wanted to transition to cinema, to feature films. And Jade was pretty much, along with Kiss of Death, these were his launching pad films to starring in movies. Here's the thing. This plot centers on a assistant district attorney played by David Caruso. He plays David Corelli. He investigates the murder of a prominent art dealer in San Francisco. The catch is the people who might be involved in this art dealer's murder is Trina Gavin. Trina Gavin is a psychologist played by Linda Fiorentino. She is what you can actually ultimately guess at the beginning of the movie. She might be a woman that he really was in love with at one time or might still be in love with. But the catch is Trina Gavin, played by Linda Fiorentino, she's married to actually Matt Gavin. Matt Gavin is a high-powered lawyer, much richer than David Corelli, a very rich, powerful man in San Francisco, played by a Bronx Tale writer and actor Chaz Palminteri. That's the movie. There's Richard Crenna from Rambo, he plays Governor Edwards. There are other people here. There's Michael Biehn. He plays a police detective, Bob Hargrove. Michael Biehn, he's always great. Yes, Eric Holmes, for your podcast listeners, he actually raised a thumbs up to Michael Biehn. So he's very supportive of Michael Biehn. I am supportive. I'm sure Bruce Perky is supportive of Michael Biehn as well. My only thing about Michael Biehn with this one is before he actually does a performance, his mustache in this movie actually walked into the scene before he did, which was amazing mustache by Michael Biehn. I hope that was a real mustache he was sporting. And also Angie Everhart is also a very memorable character in this movie. She plays this woman named Patrice Jacinto. All you need to know about Joe Esterhazy is if Joe Esterhazy, if you've seen Sliver or Basic Instinct, you're going to know a couple things. Jade is going to have a lot of sex, or maybe some sex, some violence, maybe sex and violence intermingled. It's an erotic thriller. It's a mystery thriller. It's a lot of things. We're going to get into it right now. First off, let's start off with Eric Holmes. You've seen Jade a couple of times. As of recently, you saw it, I believe, a couple of months ago. So you're actually the expert regarding Jade. Your overall thoughts on the movie?
Watching Jade, I keep forgetting that it's a William Friedkin movie. I keep thinking it's a Brian De Palma movie because it kind of has a lot of the hallmarks, minus probably the split diopter. That I don't recall one in this. Maybe there is, and I missed it. But I got the sense that William Friedkin probably watched I don't know, Body Double or probably just watch a bunch of Brian De Palma movies and go, I want to do one of those. And then Joe Esterhazy is like, hey, I got something for you. And it's like, sweet. And then Jade was born from that. I don't know if that's the case, but that's kind of what it feels like. A lot of the plot is kind of hard to follow for the most part. It's kind of one of those mystery things where plot's pretty much hard to follow. But what I liked about it was, first of all, the car chases. I mean, that's kind of it seems that that's William Friedkin's bread and butter, especially in this and The Hunted. There's some awesome car chases. There's one particular part where someone gets hit by a car. There's that stunt. I think you probably know what I'm talking about.
Well, there's something. Yeah, someone gets hit by a car,
and the camera it's not like a cutaway thing. That's a straight up stunt. It's a pretty freaking amazing stunt.
The stunt goes through the Chinese New Year's parade. It goes through the docks. It goes through a lot of different scenes in the movie.
Before that, not Linda Fiorentino, but I think it was Jade that gets hit by the car.
Oh, right,
sitting there, and then you hear the car and look over, boom, and then she just goes flying, and it's like one shot. It looks freaking amazing. I think they cut enough to get a stunt double in there. But whoever that stunt double is, kudos to them because they had to have taken a hit. I can't see any way that anyone could do that stunt and just not get just royally effed up.
We're going to talk about spoilers. Who does get hit? It might. It's probably not Jade. We're not going to give away who gets hit.
Oh, sorry. I thought this was.
We're going to do.
Sorry.
Okay. No worries. Someone gets hit. Let's just say someone gets hit. Someone gets hit by a car. Someone gets hit by a car.
Yeah.
But then it leads to it starts off with a hit on the street, and then it leads to the Chinese New Year's parade and to the end of the docks. It's one big elongated sequence. It's the money shot. One of the big reasons, not the only reason, to see Jade. Yes, sir.
So that scene you're talking about, the car chase, the slow ass car chase.
Yeah.
I remember watching Way of the Gun for the first time. And I was blown away by that movie, especially the 1 mile an hour car chase in the alley in Way of the Gun. I don't know how long it's been since you've seen it.
It's been forever. Watch it again.
But they're in an alley and they're just kind of slowly, they're not even driving the car. They're bringing their foot outside the car and pushing the car with their foot. That's how slow they're going. I was like, oh, that's so brilliant. You just have a really tense car chase, and they're hardly, they're barely going a mile an hour. And then to watch Jade and go, oh, I wonder if that's where Chris McQuarrie got the slow ass car chase idea. Because you have the cars where they're speeding through and crashing through everything, but then you got that thing where they're barely idling the car by because there's so many people around and they're just trying to, yeah, it's good stuff. And William Friedkin's kind of I think he's kind of an underrated action director. Like people think of Friedkin. Well, no, because they bring up the French Connection.
And of course, what he did with Sorcerer, with the tank, with the gas, with that gasoline thing.
Yeah, but
To Live and Die in L.A. You've seen the chase in To Live and Die in L.A.
Yeah, but I don't know that, and I could be wrong, but I don't feel that William Friedkin's known as an action director. And he's freaking fantastic at directing action.
Yeah.
He gets the geography down. He gets the tension down, tells the story within these action set pieces. Granted, a car chase has nothing to do with the erotic thriller plot that, has very little to do with the erotic thriller part, but it's great stuff.
Well, Eric was talking Bruce, it has nothing to do, and that scene is obligatory. That car chase seems obligatory within the whole fabric of the Jade narrative. And this movie is exactly what Eric was saying about how it reminded me of Brian De Palma. The opening shots where we witness the remains or the killing of that art dealer, the post effect of it. We were actually drawn in via, I guess, Rear Window style. So there's a lot of Hitchcock and De Palma references at the beginning of the movie. The movie is scored by the late composer James Horner. James Horner is kind of doing his own kind of very spooky suspense thriller kind of score as well. There's a lot of really cool things to love about it, but ultimately there's a lot of mixtures of there's just a whole bunch of ingredients, and I'm wondering if it made a good meal for you, Bruce, ultimately.
Well, I think I'm the only person that probably saw this in the theater, which I did actually. Didn't remember it very well. It's been a long time. But watching it the second time, it's kind of enjoyable despite itself. It's kind of how I felt. I think this movie is, it's kind of a mess. It's about as Joe Esterhazy as you can get. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is a kind of movie that just doesn't get made at all anymore, if you think about it. Like the erotic thriller is pretty much a dated thing as far as movies go. In fact, that's the kind of my overall impression of this. This is really a dated movie in a lot of ways. It's kind of preposterous. It kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think it could be really enjoyable for that reason. I think you could really enjoy it almost as a camp movie from bygone days. Because I thought about this and I was watching it. I was like, what else came out this year? And I looked and I was like, this came out the same year as Seven. Seven seems like a modern movie. This seems like a dated movie, in my opinion. I look at this movie and I think this could have been made in 1982, So it's enjoyable. It's kind of silly. Some of the acting is definitely dubious. And when we act about who that person is, Jade or not Jade, there's a scene with her which is just ridiculously written, where it's just like one of those scenes where it's like, and yes, they know her as Jade. There's like it's like those like really like expository moments. It's fun. It's silly. I wouldn't recommend it to people who want a seriously made, tightly wound, I guess, procedural, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. You could poke a billion holes in this movie. And as far as the chase goes, I wasn't really down for the chase. I think the chase was kind of like
oh, really?
I think the chase
amazing.
was like, it was like about 4 different cliches in one, especially the scene going through the parade. I mean, to me, that has been overdone so many times. I mean, how many James Bond movies alone have had a chase through a parade? It's just like
going a mile an hour. I would say only one, and that movie is called Way of the Gun.
I think this
usually they're not in a car, but I mean, it was just. I mean, I found it pretty silly.
I'll be honest. You found it silly. I actually recommend Jade simply for the car chase. I said, this movie is 95 minutes. Watch this movie for the car chase. Watch this movie because it is silly in certain spots. The big minus of this movie, in my opinion. Okay. Linda Fiorentino as Katrina Gavin. She's a very smart actress. She doesn't act anymore. She hasn't acted in probably for a while, for the last 12, 14 years. And she hasn't really been big since the 90s. She started in Last Seduction, really interesting, good movie. And she was in Dogma. She's been in a whole bunch of Men in Black, a whole bunch of other movies. She's supposed to play this really sexual dynamo who may or may not be Jade. And she's a woman who's supposed to attract so many men. She attracts obviously her husband. She attracts David Corelli, played by David Caruso. And I don't know, I believed her as a psychologist, and maybe it's my own taste. I just didn't feel the chemistry with Fiorentino in Jade. I felt no chemistry between her and Palminteri. I felt zero chemistry with her and Caruso. And this movie is supposed to be a sexy thriller.
I don't blame her. I don't blame her. I blame them.
I would say, one, her chemistry between her and Palminteri is of fear or distance, because they're like married, but they're not the chemistry is not supposed to be there because they're kind of, you know, together but not really.
It's more like a power play situation, right?
Yeah. And her chemistry is not there with David Caruso because David Caruso, his chemistry is with the camera, because this movie is David Caruso the movie. I'm trying to think of if there's anyone more perfect than David. Like I can't even put my finger on it. This movie was straight up made for David Caruso.
You bring up a great point. Another reason why to see this movie is if you love David Caruso. This is a David Caruso movie. There is no one who plays the, hey, everyone move away because I own the joint kind of feeling that David Caruso gives off. He gave that feeling off in King of New York, even though he was one of the supporting characters. He actually almost stole that movie with his character playing the cop. Also, this is such a David Caruso movie is because he plays David Corelli, an assistant DA, but you don't believe he's a lawyer in Jade. You think he's a cop. He's actually, it's like he's playing a cop. He's more of a cop in this movie than the Michael Biehn character. Okay, so I thought that was really pretty interesting. Yeah, it does have some value added because of the David Caruso performance. I thought David Caruso was doing David Caruso things with Jade, and I kind of like that as well.
David Caruso is playing a cop. That may be why he's hamming it up. Yow!
I would say I would defend Linda Fiorentino as well to say that kind of exactly what Eric said, which is neither of those two male actors is really supposed to be someone that she has this smoldering relationship with anymore. Good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think expecting that from her in this role is really part of the deal. In fact, we're not seeing her that way with anybody in this movie. She actually is, it's only kind of in tale about her, you know, like in Legend, we don't actually really see her in that situation, like in the moment. So I don't blame her in that. And once again, I'd say the script is kind of part of that too. So
if you can buy into some of the silliness and some of the weird narrative threads in Jade, I think I would recommend this movie. It comes with the caveat of it is a little bit incoherent at times. Eric was talking about the plot and whatnot. It's a lot of that stuff is secondary, and it doesn't really feel. Eric made another good point. He was kind of wondering, he forgot that it's directed by William Friedkin. It doesn't really feel like a pure Friedkin movie apart from some of the cop chases or the gritty questioning stuff. But I did like this as an overall experiment, even though it's flawed. I liked it so much that I purchased for $10 on Amazon Prime Video. I purchased Jade, the director's cut. And during our spoilers, I'm just going to really mention what I thought of. I didn't really rewatch the Jade director's cut. I actually purchased it and watched some of the extra 12 minutes that were added. And I'll talk about that during our spoilers section. So final go round regarding Jade, I give it a recommendation, even with all its flaws. I enjoyed the film. Bruce, no recommendation or recommendation for you?
I would recommend it as a camp watch.
Camp watch? Eric, good one. Eric Holmes, how about you?
Yeah, I'd probably recommend it. I mean, it was pretty fun to watch, and if you like the erotic thrillers, this is pretty good. I did not watch the director's cut though. I did not watch the director's cut of Jade. That might be because I'm kind of green. Yeah.
Very good.
Sorry, I was really reaching for a pun.
By the way, we love David Caruso. He was also good. He was also good in Mad Dog and Glory. We love.
But yeah, this is 3000% David Caruso's movie, and if you at all like David Caruso or are at all interested in David Caruso, this is. If you only watch one thing with David Caruso in it, it should be this, because this is the most David Caruso movie, probably the most David Caruso anything I've seen.
He's also good in this movie called Kiss of Death, starring Nicolas Cage, which I haven't seen in a while. I definitely would love to rewatch that David Caruso film. Also, before we get to The Hunted and Jade, they're both streaming as of this recording on Paramount Plus. So you can definitely see both William Friedkin films streaming on Paramount Plus. Obviously, Eric Holmes has, I believe, both. You have both DVDs. They're both available on Blu-ray and DVD. The reason why I purchased, again, Jade, the director's cut, is they don't even have it on DVD or Blu-ray, which is, I found kind of really weird. That director's cut isn't even featured as a special feature. So, okay, we'll get back to that spoilers towards the end of the podcast. Now, let's get to The Hunted. Okay, now The Hunted was released 8 years later. 1995 was Jade. 2003 was The Hunted. And here is the plot line. Quote, an FBI deep woods tracker, played by Tommy Lee Jones, attempts to capture a trained assassin, played by Benicio del Toro, who has made a sport of hunting humans. Directed again by William Friedkin, again starring Tommy Lee Jones, Benicio del Toro. What this plotline doesn't tell you is at the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to Aaron Hallam, played by del Toro. He is an assassin. He is sort of this special ops guy. And unlike all his other members, he's not just front and center. He's the guy who actually gets in and out. He is a trained assassin. And the movie opens up in Kosovo, and he's tasked with taking out their Serbian leader. So we spent about 9 to 10 minutes in that flashback sequence in the middle of war. And as you can see in the village, there are innocent kids and family members. They're Albanians, and they're getting slaughtered. And obviously this war incident has a triggering effect, a PTSD effect on Aaron Hallam. He is a trained killer. When he comes back to society, he is trained to kill and hunt. The problem is, can he shut that off? He can't. And Tommy Lee Jones plays L.T. Bonham, the tracker who actually trained Aaron Hallam to become a killer. Here's the funny thing, is L.T. Bonham has never killed a person in his life. He's only trained these soldiers to kill. It's a really interesting dynamic. This is a guy who hasn't gone to war, but he teaches people how to actually track and kill without ever having killed a human. So that is the main crux of The Hunted. When Aaron Hallam becomes, with his PTSD, when he ends up killing people and becoming a menace to the world, society, it's up to L.T. Bonham to track his former protege down, hunt him down, and hopefully kill him or bring him to justice. Also starring Connie Nielsen as an FBI agent and a bunch of other people. Mark Pellegrino as Dale Hewitt, an FBI agent, a bunch of other really interesting character actors. Bruce Perky, I want to know what you think of The Hunted. Underrated, overrated, half-baked? What do you think?
I would definitely say it's underrated. But see, okay, this is a tough one because some people just won't like this movie. This is a really stripped down, lean action movie. And kind of like we talked about with some other movies, if you want to pick at it, there are definitely some things that are not very realistic, but that's not exactly what you're going to this movie for. And one of the things that I really, really liked about it is almost all the set pieces are done out on location. You know, they're either on the streets of Portland, they're in the forests of Northwest, there's a variety of places they occur, but they're not on sound stages, and you really feel that. And I think that adds a sense of, I don't know, veracity to it. Because like I said, if you pick apart some of the little pieces, you'll be like, wait, what did that character do that for? That's not very realistic. But you kind of forgive it because everything else is so grounded as far as the locations and settings and all that. And the biggest, I guess, key of a movie like this is two really strong characters. You know where they're coming from, and a character that's essentially the villain, that they're constantly giving you reasons to like understand him. So it's like you kind of want him to be redeemed. So that's really key, I think, to a movie like this. It's not just straight bad guy. There's some elements to there which I think enrich it. And then last but not least, I love how Tommy Lee Jones, we talk about how he hasn't killed and all this, but over time and time again in this movie, he'll keep going in with nothing. No gun, no knife. There's one point early on where he goes to track Benicio for its character for the first time, and he doesn't have anything. You don't know how long he's gonna be out there in the woods. He has like just a shirt and his pants, and I'm just like, you're gonna die of hypothermia, dude. You don't have nothing. And he just goes in, and he keeps going into scenes like this where it's almost comical, but you kind of believe it too. Where it's almost comical, where it's like Tommy Lee Jones has nothing. You're like, dude, you're kind of getting to be an older guy. You have no chance here. How are you going to make this work? But you also kind of believe it when you see it go down. So I thought I had a lot of fun with this movie. I think it's real, like I said, streamlined, pure action, pure thriller. If you kind of like that kind of movie, I don't know how you wouldn't like this movie.
There are parts in this movie where there's no dialogue, where it's just Tommy Lee Jones, Benicio del Toro, one's chasing the other, one's trying to elude the other person. And it's just shots of them in the wilderness. We talked about the car chase in Jade. There is a chase in this movie that I think is actually better than Jade. And I love Jade. There is a driving chase sequence that I think is fantastic and overlooked. Eric Holmes, what did you think overall of The Hunted? High on your list for Friedkin?
Greg, I have to agree with Bruce there. I believe this movie should play in every outhouse, whorehouse, hen house, and shit house. Yeah, this movie's pretty stripped down, and it's kind of a '90s action movie. Did this come out in the '90s or was this 2000s?
This is 2003.
Okay,
yeah. Well, it feels like a '90s thing, right?
Yeah. I got a little nostalgia just because it's pretty much like The Fugitive. I mean, it's kind of the same wheelhouse. This one's a little better because it's in the forest, so you get you got a lot of the greens, and kind of similar to when I was watching Sorcerer, or not a William Friedkin movie, but Romancing the Stone. Like, every movie from this era needs to be shot in a forest or a jungle. But this one is pretty fun. Kind of similar to First Blood, but without like the emotional weight that First Blood has. I think a lot of people forget that First Blood gets pretty heavy emotionally. This has moments of that, but mostly it's this one's just kind of a fun sort of action movie. Real simple. Not much to add to what you guys said. Other than that final, like, is it spoiler to say that there's a final fight in this?
Yeah, we'll get to the final fight. Yeah, there is a final fight. It's inevitable. Okay. That's not a spoiler.
The fact that I can say that there's a final fight, I can say what I was getting at. That thing was fucking awesome.
Yeah,
that was like, because I'd seen this movie a while ago, and then just rewatching it recently for this. I'm like, God damn, that thing's so good. And there's a couple parts in particular, shots that they do. And again, that's William Friedkin being a fucking dynamite action director. The fights between them, like, and to Bruce's point, there's stuff in this that doesn't make sense. Like, if you're a cop or a detective or whatever, you're gonna watch this go, ain't how we do it. But overall, I dig this one a lot, and this is kind of this one feels like one of those meat and potatoes type movie. There's not a lot of extra stuff. It's just salt, pepper on the steak, and that's all you need, and it's delicious.
Bruce, you're talking about the stripped down narrative and the idea with the antagonist. You kind of, I'm not saying you feel for him, but you understand sort of the shadings of his character. Okay, good and bad. I thought this was really interesting because the protagonist, Tommy Lee Jones's character, it comes into question about the idea of the father and son. He is sort of a father figure to Benicio's character, and one has to ponder throughout the narrative: did this hero of the story actually fail the antagonist? Actually, and that's one of the themes that Friedkin doesn't really overblow, because this is pretty much a stripped down narrative. But I really like that element where you're actually thinking, you know what, you are the protagonist, but there are things that you've done that maybe you should have paid attention to. Did you like that element as well, that he's not just a clear cut perfect protagonist?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I was going to mention, because Eric mentioned The Fugitive, and that's kind of a key difference, right? In The Fugitive, the whole idea is that you have a totally wronged person that's being pursued, and he's constantly trying to prove that, hey, I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm just trying to, clear my name. Whereas here, Benicio's character has done a lot of these things, and he is dangerous, and he is kind of on the edge. But what you're saying about Tommy Lee Jones' character, now that is really interesting. And there's a key scene in the middle of this. This isn't a spoiler. There's a key scene in the middle of this where it has a flashback, and it shows the training, and he's showing how he's training, like how to effectively totally kill somebody with all these slashes, and cut this artery, and then stab up to the sternum and get the heart and all this stuff. And as you're watching it, you've already got the context of what Benicio has become. And you kind of get this feeling that, Tommy Lee Jones' character, even though it's not, like you said, it's not very explicit, that there's kind of this idea, like, I've created these monsters, and he's kind of like, I've sent these guys out there. They do this stuff, and they're totally unequipped to kind of come back to the world. What do they do now? So I think that is an interesting subtext. It isn't really required, because, like Eric says, it's meat and potatoes. This is an action movie for first and foremost, a thriller. But those little parts are really great. And last thing, I was glad you mentioned First Blood, because I wanted to mention, think about the last movie. We had Crenna and Caruso, who are both in First Blood. So that's a nice little thing. And I oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. I'll come back to it. I have something else I was going to bring up, but it'll come.
I will add that the only thing wrong with this movie is that Katrina and Caruso was not in The Hunted.
Oh yeah. That's what I was going to say. I'll shut up and let you guys talk. But I think that if you look at the two movies, and you guys may or may not agree with me on this, I feel like part of the thing we're talking about with Jade is I feel like there were so many strong personalities there between Caruso and Esterhaus's writing and Friedkin that even though you can see him a little bit there, I think he gets lost a little bit in that process. And I feel like you don't quite get that Friedkin feeling from it. This one feels like Friedkin had control over this. You know what I mean? It's like he's controlling the look and the feel and the style and the mood of this movie. I feel like it's really strong.
So this is called I have here the Friedkin Connection. I borrowed it at my local library, and he was saying this in his actually auto bio, and he was saying he felt disappointed with Jade. He felt that he disappointed the higher ups in Paramount. He was married. He still is married to Sherry Lansing. I think for a while she was head of the studio. He said he felt like he did some of his best work in Jade. And what's interesting is the 2 or 3 pages he actually talks about Jade. He doesn't talk about the performances. He doesn't talk about the story. What does he talk about, Eric? What do you think he talks about as far as best work?
David Caruso and the 2-mile-an-hour car chase. And the fact that there was a Warner Enterprises trailer in there.
Yes, he basically talks about the car chase for the two pages, and he was saying he feels like some of his best work, but he felt disappointed. The movie bombed, and he felt like he disappointed the people over Paramount. Now with The Hunted, his overall just post comments on that movie, he was proud of it. He thought he did well with pacing and the drama. I thought this was, like, to your point, Bruce. This felt more like a William Friedkin movie. The great thing about William Friedkin is this movie probably had a certain budget. Can you imagine a major studio releasing The Hunted today? That wouldn't happen. It would be like straight to Netflix or straight to Hulu. It wouldn't be a theatrical release anymore. It's amazing that back in 2003, these were the kind of movies that were being released on a weekend. So I miss those type of movies, stripped down. But William Friedkin was still able to do some really great action sequences, like you were mentioning, Eric. A lot of action sequences in The Hunted. For me, to be honest, it's one of my favorite Friedkin films. Does it reach Sorcerer or The French Connection status? No, but I mean, I put this right up there as far as underrated, like Killer Joe type, like as far as underseen, underappreciated films from William Friedkin. This is right. The Hunted is right up at the top. Eric Holmes, yes.
I don't think it's really fair to compare this like to The Exorcist, like to his Sorcerer and Exorcist, because much like Sorcerer, Sorcerer was supposed to be suspenseful, and that's exactly what it is. The Hunted is supposed to be a action kind of thriller, and that's like Hunted is exactly what the movie needs to be. It gets a little silly sometimes. There was a fight in a warehouse that stores steam, I guess. That part was a little silly, but that's kind of, it's not perfect, but it's the kind of, it's just a distilled movie. The Hunted is exactly the movie that I think it was trying to be, and I think it's successful at it. It doesn't really try to add a bunch of frills in it, and quite honestly, if it did, I think it would hurt the movie, because this seems like a cat and mouse, Tommy Lee Jones looking in every outhouse, whorehouse, penthouse, looking for Benicio del Toro. And if you add a bunch of extraneous stuff in it, like Jade, that has a bunch of extraneous stuff in it, but that kind of is part and parcel with those type of movies. The Brian De Palma type, with erotic thrillers. You need all that excess extra plot that no one can follow, because that's kind of part of the genre. And it's weird that you brought up that Jade was a failure and The Hunted was the one that he was like, what did you say that he
said he was disappointed with Jade the way it did at the box office, but he felt like he failed them by not making it a hit. But he said it's some of his best work that he's done. But it was interesting. It was telling that the best work that he was talking about in those 2 pages for Jade, he was only mentioning the car chase sequence.
So I remember when Jade came out in theaters. I didn't see it in theaters. I don't know how old I was, but I thought Jade was a bigger movie maybe for some reason I thought that was a hit, but apparently not.
It was a big
I think
bomb.
it kind of killed Caruso, didn't it? Didn't it kind of kill Caruso?
Killed Caruso.
And he basically came back to what is it, CSI and stuff or whatever it was.
He went back to television ultimately. I mean,
I'm just a young spring chicken. I don't quite remember that well, but my recollection was that Jade was a big hit back in the day, but apparently not. And that The Hunted, I remember that came out. For some reason I remember that getting shit on a lot. So
you're right. You're right. That movie didn't do any good business at all for Paramount, but it's one of those movies that over the years that it's garnered a lot more love. It's one of those in posterity, The Hunted keeps on growing and growing as far as his own body of work, especially. So I think that, I mean, I saw The Hunted probably back in the day in 2003, and I thought it was exactly like you said, Eric, a stripped down thriller that I thought was underappreciated. And 17 years later, I feel the same way, but I like it even more. This is one of those movies I can keep on watching over and over again because it really fits my sensibilities. So for me, The Hunted is a really strong recommendation for me. Bruce, solid recommend for you?
Yeah, especially if you're an action fan, I think it's really good. If you want a lot more character, it's not super duper complex. It's like we said, it's simple. But if you like a good straight ahead action movie with no frills, it's right up there. It's good.
All right, and Eric, solid recommend for you for this one, for The Hunted.
Everything Bruce said and everything you said, I am thumbs up on.
All right, now that's it. That is the end of our podcast. We're going to quickly talk about the spoilers. So listeners, thank you so much for supporting us here on Find Your Film. Again, we will have links on our podcast show notes for Amazon Associates. We're Amazon Associates members. So if you rent or purchase any of these movies, use our links, we get a small commission. Okay, that said, that out of the way. Now, Jade, I downloaded the director's cut last night, saw the deleted scenes. Now we're going to get to the spoilers of Jade. At the end of Jade, first of all, what did you guys think about the end of Jade, where the killer and the killer of the art dealer ended up being Chaz Palminteri's character, and it actually didn't end up being Michael Biehn or his cronies or the right-hand man of the governor? Did you like that little twist at the end when the actual real culprit was Chaz Palminteri and not those other guys?
Yeah, well, I will say yes, because I know you're going to add to this.
Yeah, were you surprised initially, Eric, when you saw it, that it was Chaz? After all, he was actually okay.
Not so much, and that's not because I saw it coming, but like I mentioned before, Jade's one of those movies where I'm kind of just in the world and enjoying the characters and watching the ridiculousness of it all. I'm not paying that much attention to the plot. So when the twist comes, I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. But you mentioned something that you'll get to that I did like quite a bit.
And Bruce, what do you think of the ending with it when Chaz is actually the real killer? And if he was if he was a real killer, shouldn't he have made sure that his wife was a little bit more safe towards the end? I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, once again, like Eric says, it's like this isn't really a logical kind of thing. And I think in this kind of movie, also that kind of ending isn't. If it really surprises you and it's like, wow, my mind is blown, then I don't know, you're not really watching these kind of movies, because it's one of those movies where it's like there's no reason for his character to even be in the movie if he's not somehow involved, right? Like, because he doesn't do anything really in the movie. It's like, why is his character so big? Oh, why is he a known person? Well, he's involved somehow. So you kind of assume he's involved in some way. And then they have that whole thing where they show his little cuff link at the beginning, so it's like, oh, that's going to come into play at some point. No, it didn't throw me off that much. I was like, okay, he's the guy. So
the original ending, and listeners, we're assuming you've already seen Jade or you don't mind spoilers. The original ending has everyone, the cronies of, obviously the bad people were the governor, because the governor, played by Richard Crenna, he actually was implicated he was possibly a suspect in the killing of the art dealer, because the art dealer had incriminating photos of people, the higher ups in San Francisco, in compromising positions with various people. And Chaz Palminteri's character, Lenny Fiorentino's character, they play the Gavins. They were part of it. The governor was part of this whole sex kind of game kind of situation of Jade. So you're thinking throughout the entire movie that it's the governor and his cronies who actually are killed the art dealer and were dispatching of everyone else that were involved in the art dealer's world. They're half right, because ultimately it's the governor who sends his right-hand man, played by Holt McCallany, you might not know the name, but when you see his face, you've seen him in a million things. There's also Michael Bihn's character, who was the cop. And there's another guy who plays a young lawyer who's hardly in the movie. Those are the three bad guys at the end who try ultimately to get rid of Linda Fiorentino, Chaz Palminteri, and David Caruso. So it's like a 3-on-3 situation. Ultimately, those three cronies are brought to justice. Two of them get killed. So the ending of the movie has Matt Gavin, played by Chaz Palminteri, being the bad guy, and it ends with him, I guess, him and his wife Trina Gavin, played by Linda Fiorentino, still continuing to play their chess games of a relationship. And ultimately, it's a sad ending because Trina Gavin she knows she's married. She's married to a killer, and B, because he has all this incriminating evidence on her as being Jade and whatnot, you're actually assuming that she might end up in this relationship that she really doesn't want to be in for the rest of her life. And that's the end. That's the end of Jade. So that's kind of a really downer, sexually deviant, perverse ending. And you know what? David Caruso's character, the attorney, he thinks he caught the killers, but he didn't. His killer was his best friend. So all of those threads are left dangling. And Bruce, you were fine with that ending. You were fine with that kind of downbeat ending. And Eric, Eric, you're fine. You were fine with that downbeat ending, right?
Yeah. Again, I didn't think too much about it. It happened. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool. But that wasn't the reason I watched a movie like this.
I love that ending. I love that downbeat ending because the killer pretty much gets away with it. He gets to keep his wife, and he actually emotionally, you're assuming he's going to emotionally terrorize her for the rest of her life. That's the end of Jade. Fade out. Okay. Great downbeat ending. Maybe that's why Friedkin kept that. Maybe he didn't, because that director, quote unquote, director's cut, which is 107 minutes, 12 minutes longer than the original theatrical cut. It actually has the original ending. The director's cut has Trina Gavin, and she sees all the photos that Matt Gavin has of her in compromising positions. She realizes Matt confesses that he's the murderer. But while they're having this conversation outside their mansion, is David Caruso in his car, playing David Corelli. He is actually listening in on their conversation. It's on tape. It's on it, like you said, it would lose the flower of evil. It's on a cassette deck. Okay, so the end has him stopping the recorder and actually leaving the car and heading towards the house, and assuming that he's going to probably arrest or actually have his best friend Matt Gavin arrested. That is how the original director's cut of Jade ends. Yes, Eric.
Now, I do need to watch this again with the director's cut, because the way you're describing that sounds like one of my favorite endings of I don't know if this is my favorite ending ever, but this is up there. But the ending of Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, where you have the whole movie going, and then he's talking to I forget the actor's name at the end.
Robert Shaw.
Robert Shaw, yeah. And he's talking to him, and we know, we're watching it, we know that he was the guy.
We're gonna spoil the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. Be careful.
36 years later.
Thanks for catching me. But there's dude, Bruce,
something similar might occur. We're not sure.
There was a thing where someone gives a look, and it's just real quick and roll credits. And we had seen the whole movie up to that point. We just needed that look, and that tells us everything we need to know in roll credit. What you're describing with that alternate ending to Jade sounds like almost that exact thing, where it's like you get just that little bit of extra information, and it's like, oh, okay, that and you just kind of put the rest of the pieces together.
The original cut of Jade had David Corelli and Trina Gavin, David Caruso, and Linda Fiorentino. It's actually inferred that they may have been together, right? It's kind of inferred that they had a chemistry before. The director's cut, you have Chaz Palminteri and David Caruso talking in church, and Chaz Palminteri was saying, "Hey, you know what? My wife said that you were really bad in bed." So they actually have a line where you know that David Corelli and Trina Gavin actually were in a sexual relationship. So there's a couple little things. The third person who was killed, the young attorney, there's a young attorney scene that's fleshed out a little bit more. So it's a more fleshed out film. Still, originally my same feelings of Jade still is the same with the Jade director's cut. Still enjoyed the movie, but I thought this ending was really interesting. What do you think of that? Do you like that ending better, Bruce, over the original ending, or either or?
I've actually, since Eric mentioned it, I've actually decided what the true ending should be. And the true ending should be the sequence of the girl in the forest with the tape recorder in a reverie from Lose the Flower of Evil, but out of the tape is coming the conversation from the end of Jade.
That's amazing. And now, so that is it for Jade.
All right, Bruce, repeat that, but slower.
Like the car chase scene. Okay. Now, for the 100, there's nothing else to really say about the 100 except that Eric was alluding to it. There is a final sequence, I guess, by top of the mountain or something, and then there's like a waterfall situation. There is a hand-to-hand combat with sort of man-made knives. They have a great.
That's montage. What I want to mention that. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Did you like that whole scene when they like a Rocky scene? Instead of training, they're each making their own knives by the.
No, it's more like Predator.
Yeah, like Predator, right. And ultimately, they.
I was going to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's the part I think is so preposterous, like, because it's like, you don't know how much time has passed, and he's like forging a knife.
Yeah. Okay. It is a little bit improbable. How can Tommy Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro, how can their characters make really grade A knives within a span of 2 seconds? Eric, is that possible? You're a man of nature. You're a man of crafts.
Now with Tommy Lee Jones's knife, he took the rock and basically chipped the rock.
Yeah,
that would work, and that would actually work really well because rocks are dirty. There's a lot of bacteria in the little pores and everything. So every time he stabbed him, and he must have stabbed him like 100 times, like throughout the duration of the fight. Benicio del Toro walks away from that. He's not living very long because whatever bacteria was in that, it's like the what they call those lizards, the something Komodo dragon. Yeah, they can bite you. The bite's not going to kill you. It's the thing that gets in the it's the bacteria that gets in the bite. You're going to walk throughout the desert and pass out, and die. And then the Komodo dragon's like, I'm gonna eat a human. And so the rock knife might not be effective immediately in a fight, but it's gonna be more effective, I think, in the long run. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Now, Benicio del Toro forging his knife.
What is that? That's like he's like a blacksmith, an expert blacksmith, along with being a great Kosovo assassin, right?
So he forged it, and he's kind of doing whatever he can with the tools he has, and that's fine. And then at the end he dunks it, take a red hot knife, dunk it in the water, and he hardened the steel, but he doesn't have a grinder, so his knife isn't sharp. So basically, you have a hardened slab of just steel, which is fine for just hitting people blunt, but it's not going to cut you. There's 0% chance that it's sharp enough to cut you in the way that they did in the movie. Oh, so I'm getting I'm getting a little too
specifically. That's what we wanted.
Yeah, you know what? Fuck, it would work. It would totally work.
So the ending is predictable. We have Tommy Lee Jones versus Benicio del Toro. We all know that Tommy Lee Jones, who plays L.T. Bonham, ultimately kills Aaron Hallam after about several minutes. It's a very good fight.
I would say it's a great fight.
Great fight. I kind of wanted to personally. Great fight. I was fine with the ending. I would have liked a Blade Runner ending where you know what, Tommy Lee Jones's character has not killed someone. So maybe Aaron Hallam, in his own way, excuse me 1 second while I cough, hold on, has the kill point. Yeah, he has the chance to kill L.T. Bonham, and he doesn't. I thought that would have been a cool, and then we could have played with that in a certain way where actually L.T. Bonham doesn't either maybe the FBI agents kill Aaron Hallam, maybe from a distance, and maybe make the fight itself bring a little bit of dishonor to that fight. And then giving a little bit more dishonor to L.T. Bonham's character, because at the end of this movie, not only did his protege die at the hand of a bullet, which is probably against their whole idea of nature and the way to live, but L.T. Bonham at the end of the movie still has not killed someone. I don't know.
No, you know what? And I mean, this is a bit of a rewrite of the end. That probably wouldn't work just because the movie's so, like, as we mentioned, this movie's so meat and potatoes that this would add probably a little too much. But to your point, well, first of all, the fact that the scene where he's teaching Benicio del Toro how to kill among the rest of the soldiers there, he's basically teaching Benicio del Toro how to kill him. Which ultimately doesn't work. But so you say that he decides not to kill Benicio del Toro. It's like, I'm responsible for this, and I've never killed anyone. I'm certainly not going to kill someone that was a student of mine. And so maybe they arrest Benicio. They capture him, handcuff him, bring him, and then Tommy Lee Jones. I never killed no one in my life except for myself.
That's an alternate. The alternate I was saying was Aaron Hallam, played by Del Toro. He actually has LT in his sights, and he's going to kill him, but he doesn't. He does a Blade Runner, and instead, he hesitates for a moment, and he decides not to kill him, and then just backs out. And then maybe someone like the FBI agents, they throw a little bit of dishonor to the proceedings, and they just take out Benicio del Toro. And LT Bonham realizes that he could have died right then and there, but his protege decided not to kill him. Bruce, weigh in on this.
Or does Benicio like stop? He pauses next to the waterfall, and then he has some kind of real poetic thing, kind of like in Blade Runner, where it's like, I've seen the fire, the flares over the skies of Kosovo, and I've seen the Portland homeless downtrodden, and then he slowly goes over the waterfall with a Jesus Christ pose,
like the mission.
And then he goes under the water, and you never see him again. Did he die? I don't know.
That'll be interesting.
And then Christopher McQuarrie leans in English, please.
Also, one final thing. At the end, we have him with the letters from Aaron Hallam, and he decides to throw the letters into the fire, and he's out there in his cabin out in the middle of the wilderness. So he's going to move on from his life. That's fine too. Again, it would have been cool, in my opinion. You have those letters, and he starts reading them, and maybe there's sort of it's inferred that he becomes even more haunted at the end of his actions. He doesn't become a killer, but weighs down on him more.
I would have had him like looking at the letters, and then the pig walks in from outside, and then he cooks a tart and eats the tart very slowly with the pig.
Oh, very, very good. Throwing in some movies from yesteryear. All right, so that is it. Our mini pod review of The Hunted and Jade. Okay, so tell us what you think of these movies. And again, there's both streaming at Paramount Plus. We will see you next week. Anything you got to say, Eric, before we get out of here? Very big day.
With William Friedkin, he's the man.
He's the man. And Bruce, as always, we're ending the podcast with you.
No, this is yours today. This is yours. You get to end it.
Okay,
I've talked enough.
I don't know how to end anything. I'll just say we will see you next week. Thank you for supporting me, Eric, and Bruce here at the Find Your Film podcast. Take care, guys.